Beaver Farm.
Live from Waterford and Dungarvan, this is Waterford at 1 News.
Good afternoon, I'm Liz Reddy. Today's top stories. The Taoiseach says he expects to reveal the country's exit plan from lockdown in the next few days. There's still no change in the number of patients with coronavirus at University Hospital Waterford, and a Waterford restaurateur says the industry was the first to be hit by the crisis and it'll be the last to recover. The Taoiseach says he expects to reveal the country's exit plan from lockdown in the next few days. But Leo Varadkar's warning, we're still not in a position to ease restrictions. Stephanie Rowan reports.
The Taoiseach's expected to reveal a phased exit plan from lockdown with a number of stages. The first phase, according to the Irish Times, would see over 70s allowed out to exercise on a no-touch basis. 4 people not from the same house could gather within social distancing rules, and builders and gardeners could return to work. Some shops like DIY centres could reopen. The 2-kilometre distance would increase to 5 or 10, and schools would reopen, but only with restricted classes for Leaving Cert students. We'd then move on to the next phase, which would see some small shops open. The phase after that would see cafes and restaurants open, while the phase after that again would allow people holiday within Ireland. The later phases would see pubs and offices reopen. Everything will be done with social distancing in place. Taoiseach Leo Varadkar wouldn't confirm any of the speculation, but says he'll reveal the exit strategy soon.
We hope to be in a position, or expect to be in a position, to share that with the Irish public in the next couple of days, certainly over the weekend. And what that plan will do is set out the different steps, a stepwise plan, if you like, as to how we can reopen the country and reopen our society based on different intervals.
We're also due to find out soon if any restrictions can be eased on May the 5th, but the Taoiseach's warned the current numbers mean we're not there yet.
Waterford Minister of State John Halligan says people need a roadmap.
Have we a plan over the next couple of months to come out of this lockdown? People need certainty as to where we're going, what we're doing, because generally speaking, the people of Ireland have been excellent, with the exception of a very, very tiny minority. But you can see the stress levels rising. That's been accepted right across the country. So I think people have a right to know what's happening, how we're doing it.
There is still no change in the number of patients with coronavirus at University Hospital Waterford. According to HSE figures from 8 o'clock last night, there were 7 confirmed cases on site. 8 suspected cases are awaiting results. 2 people remain in intensive care. Elsewhere, there's been a spike in the number of patients with COVID-19 at St Luke's Hospital in Kilkenny. There are now 15 confirmed cases. A further 18 suspected ones are awaiting results. And as of midnight on Sunday, there were 138 cases in Waterford since the outbreak began. That's an increase of 1 since Saturday. The HSE's new COVID-19 tracing app, which is being developed by Tramore-based Nearform, will differ from other counterparts in that any data matching with those infected with the virus will take place on a person's device rather than information being sent to centralised servers. The Irish Times reports that the app, which is intended to help the HSE in tracking the spread of coronavirus and facilitating contact tracing, is expected to use Bluetooth to allow phones to facilitate the exchange of information when users confirm an infection. No firm date has been set as to when it will be available. Nearform hasn't commented on the development or what functions it will contain, as it's subject to non-disclosure agreements. These people in Tramore told Damien Tiernan on Daisha Today that they would have no problem using such an app.
Contact tracing seems to be the way forward. I wouldn't have any issues with giving out my information if it's going to help people.
Yeah, no, I think it would be a good idea, it'll probably flatten it a bit quicker and get back to normality a bit sooner, probably, it'll be a big help, I'd imagine.
It'd be a good idea, yeah, it'd be a good idea, but it wouldn't be. I would, of course. Well, why not? Is it good for society in general? It really is that simple. I get people's privacy and all that thing, but you can always uninstall it when we're through all this.
A Waterford restaurateur says the industry was the first to be hit by the crisis and it will be the last to recover. The Restaurants Association of Ireland is warning 90% of establishments face permanent closure in the coming months. It's calling on the government to intervene to prevent the sector from collapsing. Cormac Cronin is owner of Bodego and Berza restaurants in Waterford City. He shut the doors of his businesses on March 15th. He says the industry was struggling before the pandemic.
The restaurant industry worldwide, not just Waterford and Ireland, has been in a
state of chaos, to be honest. It's become, in the last number of years, it's become really, really difficult industry. The margins in our industry are just so low. Like, we'll be operating on the last few years in a 4 to 5% margins, which for a business is just crazy. It's lunacy. Most restaurants, they really are struggling just to break even. For this to come along now, it's just, I can't see any restaurant not having major difficulties.
He says they're finding it hard to see how they could function with social distancing.
With limited capacity, like Burrs next door would go from 45-seater to, at maximum, a 20-seater restaurant. Long term, that's not sustainable, obviously. Like, it'll be the same here. Here's about 80-seater, and if we're lucky to be 35-seater capacity, and it's just not viable. Some restaurants have decided not to open at all, just ride it out. If you were very, very lucky, you'd break even, but you'd probably lose money month after month. So it's trying to know what's the best thing to do. So we're going to give it a go to takeaway and delivery and keep the menu small and limited, but obviously keep the high quality.
People in Waterford and across the country are being asked to raise their Irish flags to honour frontline workers on Friday. It's an initiative by the Thomas F. Maher Foundation to mark International Workers' Day. The Waterford Revolutionary first raised the tricolour at 33 The Mall in Waterford City in 1848. Reverend Michael Kavanagh is chair of the foundation. He says we need to thank and honour all the people who he would describe as frontline workers.
That certainly is the healthcare professions, all of them, doctors, nurses, cleaners, administrators, porters. But I think one of the things that's really come to the fore is that there are people who we take for granted, and only now do we realise how much we depend on them. Farmers, delivery drivers, shop workers, communications people, keeping us informed, refuse collectors, emergency services, bus drivers, taxi drivers, train drivers.
Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil have invited the Green Party leader Eamon Ryan to further talks on forming a government. Leo Varadkar and Micheál Martin, though, stopped short of a key commitment to reduce carbon emissions by 7% a year. They say it could be considered, but there has to be more talks on how that would work at a practical level first. Taoiseach Leo Varadkar says his party is committed to addressing climate change.
I just hope that the Green Party will give it close consideration. We'd be very keen to enter formal talks on forming a government as soon as they're willing to do so, if they're willing to do so. And the target that they set of 7% is extremely ambitious. It is an ambitious target, but we accept that we need to be more ambitious when it comes to climate change.
Gardaí in Waterford have arrested a man in connection with a robbery at an off-licence in the city last night. At 8:45pm, a man armed with a hatchet entered the number 21 off-licence at Tyrone Road. His face was covered. He threatened a staff member and demanded money. While the money was being removed, another staff member wrestled the hatchet from the man and he fled on foot in the direction of Paddy Brown's Road with a small amount of cash. Nobody was injured in the incident. CCTV was viewed and the man was identified. Gardaí arrested him. A face mask was recovered at the scene. The 29-year-old's currently being detained at Waterford Garda Station. Any witnesses to the incident, or if anyone has dash cam footage, they're asked to contact Gardaí on 051 305 300.
WLR Sport, Ireland's local station of the year.
Consumer rights expert Dermot Jewell has said that the GAA has a case to answer after it changed season ticket terms and conditions last month without notifying holders. A clause was inserted to state there would be no refunds provided in the event of the GAA season, Allianz National League or Championship being postponed due to circumstances outside of the control of the GAA. However, the GAA stressed it is within its rights to adjust the small print of the loyalty scheme without making holders aware of such changes. GAA Director of Communications Alan Milton told the Irish Examiner that the change to the terms and conditions was made the week that they announced the cessation of all Gaelic Games activities. Consumer Association of Ireland advisor Dermot Jewell believes there are grounds for the terms and conditions to be considered as unfair and biased in favour of the GAA. Former All-Ireland winner with Donegal, Eamon McGee, says he was never drug tested during his inter-county career. Comes after Carlow footballer Ray Walker accepted a 4-year ban for testing positive for a banned substance, but he says accepting the ban wasn't an admission of intentional wrongdoing. McGee says he always relied on advice from medical and support staff when it came to taking supplements.
We were blessed with a good medical staff, and anything that could come in, we took was very well checked, and anything you took outside of that, you had to run by the docs. So in terms of literature, in terms of sitting down and talking, this is what you can take, this is what you can't take, it wouldn't have been, a priority for us. We just put an awful lot of trust in docs and the S&C lads.
The Japanese Prime Minister says it will be impossible to host the Olympics in Tokyo next year unless the coronavirus is contained. He believes the rescheduled event can only go ahead if the world has won its battle against the COVID-19 pandemic. PSG say they're prepared to play their remaining Champions League games abroad after the French government announced a ban on sporting events until the end of August. PSG reached the quarterfinals after beating Borussia Dortmund last month before the competition was suspended. And European captain Padraig Harrington says the Ryder Cup may have to take one for the team by playing without fans. 3 of golf's 4 majors have been postponed until later in the year, but the Ryder Cup is scheduled to take place at Whistling Straits in Wisconsin in September. Harrington told The Times that playing the Ryder Cup without fans wouldn't be in the best interests of the event, but it could be in the best interests of enough people who want to see a big sporting occasion on TV. Last week, world number 1 Rory McIlroy said a Ryder Cup without fans is not a Ryder Cup. W. Laura asking you to stay at home. Our next news is at 2.